Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular council meeting of May 25th, 2026. The first thing that I would like to do is indicate that the last time we had council meeting, we had to say goodbye to our interim CAO, Mr. Doug Legore. And this council meeting, we would like to welcome our new CAO, Michael Derricott. So, Michael, would you like to say a few words, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. It's a privilege to be here formally and to begin learning more about the community and supporting the team. I was pretty humbled when I heard about the parade you were throwing today, but then I learned that was for the Bandits, not for me. So, excited to be here serving the community of Brooks and look forward to working with council and staff to that end.
And what we're looking forward to is the Bandit festivities that are going to happen at about 6:30, 7 o'clock out here in the park. And we hope that you can attend, as well as everybody else who is here, to cheer on the Bandits on another championship round of hockey. Winning the tournament again for the BCHL is quite an accomplishment. The next item I'd like to get into is recognition of gold medalists for the 2026 Provincial Skills Canada competition. I understand that that competition was held up in Edmonton at the beginning of May, and we have 3 students here who won in that championship. And at this point in time, what I am going to do is I'm going to invite them up. And I also understand that you're taking off to another competition in Toronto? And when is that happening? Tomorrow morning. Oh, so then I better get going here so you can so you can get out of here then. Okay. The first one is for Merrick, okay? In recognition of Eric Fournier and Cade Hamry. So Cade is also coming up here because I guess you were a team, right? Yeah. Winning the gold medal in robotics category of the 2026 Provincial Skills Canada competition held in Edmonton from May 6th and 7th of this year. So tell me a little bit about robotics. Start?
Sure. So what we did over at that competition is make a total of 3 robots to compete in this little competition where we're supposed to fulfill certain objectives in a period of time using just 2 robots that are controlled by us using little controllers, and then 1 that runs on its own.
Okay. Well, congratulations on your accomplishment. So what we've got here, I'll hand this one to you so you can open it. And then I'll hand this one to you, Cade, and then you can open that one. And then also at the skills competition, Joseph over here, you fell, in recognition of winning the gold medal in the 3D game design category at the 2026 Provincial Skills Canada competition. Tell us a little bit about your 3D game design.
So this year we had to model a Hogwarts-inspired scene where we had to make a fireplace and a statue to represent one of the 4 houses. I chose Ravenclaw, so I made an eagle statue.
Okay. I'll believe you because I have no idea what that means. I guess I'm going to have to get a little bit more technical in all this. But we'll give you this one. What I'll do is ask council to come up here. And then you guys can just stand in front here. We'll allow the media to take a picture of you.
Before the media can take, can I just say, before they can make, can I just get 3 guys?
Sure.
Not that I don't want, smile guys. Perfect. Now can I get everybody else, please?
Thank you to the parents and grandparents that came along to witness what's going on today too.
So does the third one learn like censored job? Congratulations, good job.
Boys, get in the middle.
So in recognition of the Brooks Bandits having won the, I think it's the Hobie, no, what's it called? The No, the BCHL, but they have a different name for the Rogers Cup now. That's what it is. They won the Rogers Cup for the second time in a row here, which is quite an accomplishment with all the other trophies that they have garnered up. And I can still remember going to the first tournament that I think it was probably the first tournament they won out in Summerside, PEI. And, you know, I was asked by the media to come up into their box and talk a little bit about the Brooks Bandits and how they have been doing. And this is at the end of the second intermission, and I said, if they keep playing the way that they're going to play, they're going to win this tournament in Summerside. And sure enough, they won the tournament. And thereafter, I think they've won about 4 or 5 Centennial Cups and now have won the Rogers Cup a couple of times. So the Brooks Bandits and the organization have a lot to be proud of what they've accomplished within the city of Brooks over the past 10 years or more. And that's, again, why we're wearing the jerseys, and we'll be wearing the jerseys out there for the barbecue as well. So anyways, I'll call the meeting to order at 4:38. You have the agenda in front of you. Is there anything to add or delete from the agenda as you see it? If not, it has been moved by Councillor Idris that the agenda be adopted. All those in favor? Carried. You also have the minutes from the regular council meeting of May the 11th. Any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Nesbitt that the minutes from the regular council meeting held May the 11th, 2026 be approved. All those in favor? Carried. Any business arising out of the minutes? None? Okay, we also have correspondence and information, an update from council conferences and or workshops. And we also have information from the Brooks Public Library statistics. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Falkenberg that the following items of correspondence be received as information, the update on council conferences and or workshops, and the information on the Brooks Public Library statistics. All those in favor? Carried. We now have policy -001-001B, the city policy manuals and policy review, and that will be presented by Manager of Legislative Services, Amy Fonchura.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. There are two policies before you this evening. One policy outlines the process for updating the city's policy and procedure manual once policies are approved by council. And the other policy outlines the process for reviewing policies. Administration is proposing that the policies be combined into one as they are relatively similar. Therefore, administration recommends that council approve policy L001-001B and rescind policy L001-008.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Johnson that council approve policy L001-001B entitled City Policy Manuals and Policy Review, and further that policy L001-008 entitled Policy Review be rescinded. All those in favor? Carried. The next one is policy L001-029B, mural approval policy. And again, that will be Manager of Legislative Services, Amy Fonchura.
Thank you again. Through the chair to council. The mural approval policy outlines the process for approving large murals that are placed on buildings within the city. Applicants are required to provide timelines, inventory mock-ups, as well as a maintenance plan. The updated policy has all mural submissions being approved by council committee rather than splitting public and private murals to committee or council. And the policy was presented at the last council committee meeting, and a minor change was made to the definition of submission to make it more clear as per council committee's direction. Therefore, administration recommends that council approve the policy.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the mural policy? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Phillipson that council approve policy L-001-029B entitled Mural Approval. All those in favor? Carried. The next item is policy F-002-028A, memorial policy. And again, Ms. Fonchura.
Thank you again, through the chair to council. The memorial policy outlines the process for addressing and recognizing staff, firefighters, Brooks RCMP officers, and members of council in the event of a death. The policy now applies to all city staff rather than only permanent full or part-time employees that work a specific number of hours per week. Again, from a recommendation at council committee, there was a small change made to the policy to make the response to and recognition of a death more clear. Therefore, administration is again recommending that council approve this policy.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Regner that council approved policy F-002-028A entitled Memorial Policy. All those in favor? Carried. The next item we have is rescind policies, and again, it'll be Amy Fonchura again.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to council, there are 5 policies in front of you that administration is recommending be rescinded. The first policy is for the incorporation date, and a policy is not needed to declare Brooks's incorporation date, as we have a certificate that has this information on it. The second policy relates to charitable donation, and that states that the city does not make charitable donations. However, that's not our current practice, as the city does provide funding to certain charitable organizations currently. The Freedom of the City policy was first introduced by the local Air Cadet Squadron to celebrate their 75th and Canada's 150th anniversary. Freedom of the City was granted to them, however, no other requests have been received since 2017. And in 2010, the Centennial logo policy was created in conjunction with the city's centennial celebration. We used that logo for some time, however, it's no longer used, and the policy is no longer needed. And finally, the last policy is a flag loan policy, and this is not required to be a council policy. This can be an internal staff procedure. And at the council committee meeting last week, there was discussion on the Freedom of the City policy, and it was recommended that administration draft a policy to recognize exceptional citizen contributions to replace the Freedom of the City policy. Therefore, administration is recommending that all 5 policies are rescinded.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Ventura. I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you very much. A lot of these policies were out of date, and it's about time we got, some updated policies. So I appreciate the hard work.
Councillor Idris?
Thank you again. My question is regarding the historical policies, like for example, the policy on the Centennial logo. If someone 50 years from today wanted to research the logos of Brooks in some of the policies or some of the things, like would we find these archived? Like how are we?
Through the chair to Councillor Idris, yes, we keep a copy of all of the rescinded or outdated policies. They're just kept in a separate folder, so and not included in our policy manual. So if in the future someone wants to research it, they'll still be there as long as we follow the current practices we are now, but they're just not in our current policy manual.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Nesbitt that council rescind policy L-001-018 entitled Incorporation Date, policy L-001-019 entitled Charitable Donations, policy L-001-004 entitled Freedom of the City policy, or city. Next one is policy L-001-027 entitled City Centennial Logo, and policy F-002-013A entitled Flag Loan. All those in favor? Carried. The next topic that we will have is the Community Partnership Plan 2026-2029, and this was also discussed at Council Committee, and this is being brought forward by Inclusion Coordinator Robin Clausen.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to Mayor and Council, the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities Committee was formed in April of 2025, and it has since been working to develop a community partnership plan that outlines the priorities for the next 3 years. The plan was shaped through community engagement, including surveys and roundtable discussions, allowing us to hear directly from our residents about their needs and opportunities for partnership. It aligns with the council's strategic plan under the community building pillar with a focus on inclusion, belonging, and barrier reduction. The plan does provide guiding framework for the WIC committee and the inclusion coordinator, emphasizing collaboration with community partners and building on work that's already happening to avoid duplication and strengthening the overall impact. This was previously reviewed in council committee, and it is now being brought forward for formal adoption. There are 3 options before council. The first one is to adopt the plan. The second one is to request changes to the plan, and the third one is to refer it back for further community engagement. Administration is recommending that council formally adopt the community partnership plan for the years 2026 to 2029.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yep, go right ahead. Councillor Nesbitt.
Through the chair to Inclusion Coordinator Robin. So I like it all. boy, what a lot of work and effort put into that whole proposal, and thank you for that. And I like it all, but particularly like the commitment of individuals, that section. And it says, great things happen when those who are involved share a personal commitment and passion for achieving a more just and equitable society for all. One way that this can be fostered is by encouraging and involving staff at all levels of municipal government and our community members. And I'm really emphasizing our community members just as a whole. These are not, I feel, and you can tell me if this is right, but these initiatives are not just for our new Canadians, but we really want our whole community to get involved. Isn't that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Nesbitt, yes, the hope is that all of the community will be involved with the partnership plan and the things that are happening within the community to make everybody feel welcome and belonging.
Excellent. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Regner that council formally approve the Welcome and Inclusivity Partnership Plan 2026 to 2029. All those in favor? Carried. The next topic is the 2026-27 recreation rates and fees, and that will be presented by Manager Recreation Services, Tabitha Williams.
Hello, through the chair to Mayor and Council. As per policy C004001, recreation user fees, recreation rates and fees are prepared by administration with proposed changes reviewed and recommended by the the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board annually for Council's consideration. To inform the review, a sector average of recreation rates and fees was established by canvassing more than a dozen Alberta municipalities, including Cochrane, Blackfalds, Airdrie, High River, and Okotoks. The attached rates and fees schedule provides a comparison of current rates and fees against the sector average, as well as proposed rates and fees reflecting 2%, 3%, and 5% increases, including the resulting variances from the current sector average for each option. The Recreation and Parks Board remains committed to ensuring recreation facilities are affordable for Brooks and regional community members and maintaining rates and fees at levels that encourage high facility usage. At its April 15th, 2026 meeting, the Brooks and District Recreation and Parks Board passed a motion recommending a 5% increase to all recreation rates and fees, excluding school rates associated with the joint use and planning agreement. This is for the period of August 1st, 2026 to July 31st of 2027. The options up for discussion today are no increase, and raise the recreation rates and fees by 2%, 3%, or 5%. The financial implications will depend on what rate you choose. And so the recommendation is that the 2026-2027 proposed recreation rates and fees with a 5% increase be formally approved.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Regner.
As we discussed in committee and being on the rec board, the numbers we have here, like there's some of the individual user prices, we're probably under by majority of them. Now, as far as when you're trying to do a profit and a loss, having these numbers is great to know what the difference is. But I'd be interested to know the amount of users for each one. Like, are we losing on big ticket items? Are we losing a lot to many users or just a couple users? Example, I just had it here. For bulk passes of adults, 27.25 we're losing. That's on page 71. 27.25, do we sell an abundance of those?
Through the chair to Councillor Regner, that isn't something that we take into consideration when we look at the rates and fees as of yet. There's obviously room for improvement on how we advise council on increasing rates and fees, which is what we're going to be looking at in the next year.
Okay, yeah, next year I'd just like to see some numbers as far as the user amount of users we have.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Idris.
we have had a robust discussion at the council committee, and I appreciate your approach that you wanted to look at it overall, bring some sort of, not a one percentage fits all, but looking at all of these different factors for next year, and I look forward to that. With that, I would like to make a small amendment to the motion. And I would like to say, let's do an increase of 3% rather than 5%.
So Councillor Idris has moved that we accept the 3%. Any other questions?
I'm also looking forward to the review, because you mentioned that we can't just talk about a swimming pool in Tabor or a swimming pool in Brooks, because each swimming pool is different. And I got the impression that at the rec board, this was discussed at length. So I'm okay going with the recommendation of the rec board, which is 5%.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson?
Through the chair to my fellow council member, with the 3%, I guess my question is that with the understanding that Parks and Rec is going to bring us totally different numbers next year? Is that what your thought process is, or?
Whatever the data is going to tell you. I will go with what the data is going to tell you.
Thank you.
Councillor Nesbitt?
Okay, I would also support a 3% amendment motion. And the reason being that I think that we need to remain affordable for our families, youth, seniors, and all of our community to utilize these rec center facilities. And the more we raise the rates, the harder it is for families particularly to get there, or just about anybody. So that's the reason that I'm supporting the amended amount of 3%, please. Consideration.
Councillor Johnson?
Through the chair to Ms. Tabitha, I guess my question is, because you mentioned seniors. Seniors, my understanding, get a 50% off discount, correct? I thought it was 50% off.
Through the chair to Councillor Johnson, there is a senior rate
Yeah.
that's
okay.
reduced. I don't think it's 50% though.
But then if they're in the LICO, they would be reduced further, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So I guess my question is percentage-wise, and it's going to be hard, roughly, can you tell us how many people roughly are paying full price versus a discount of some sort, roughly? Is it 50-50? Is it 75-25?
That was a different conversation about the RFA program. After that conversation, it went out of my head. So,
Okay.
sorry.
Through the chair to mayor and council. So those numbers are readily available. They're in our year-end report. We just don't have them prepared for this meeting, but we have those numbers from last year.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there, Councillor Regner?
I believe, to my council colleague, we cut $119,000 when we cut the programming discounts. I think that was the number that you might be asking about. The question I have in all of this, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 50%, those numbers, what does that equate in total revenue? If we up it by 5%, are we talking to generate $150,000 of the $900,000 the pool, for instance, loses? Are we talking $20,000? Like, do we have a number that's going to increase the value? Like, what's that final 5%, 2%, 3%?
We don't have a final number or an estimate even. Because of the changes in the programs, we're looking at a change in revenue quite substantially from last year, so that last year numbers wouldn't be indicative of what we would typically see, or what we would be expecting to see this year.
But if you're asking for a 5% increase, you're asking for 5% above last year's numbers of revenue of 280,000. You want 5% more, you want 2% more. You should have these numbers when you present them to us. What dollar value are you putting 5% on? Because if you can't put a dollar value on it right now, I'm fine to go 0% for the community. Like, I want to know what we're charging the community. If you're telling us 5% is $15,000, I would rather give people 0% increase for $15,000. If you're telling me it's going to represent $200,000, that it's an actual difference in our tax base, let's look at that. But right now, I'd make a motion for 0%. That's,
Okay. Councillor Falkenberg?
Through the chair to my fellow councillors, a 5% increase is an increase, and it will definitely cost our citizens more money. But we're not talking about substantially jacking up the price of everything. With the rate of inflation over the last few years, we need to keep up with covering our costs somewhat. We can't continue to move along with the cost of our rec just increasing every year and to a point where we can no longer fund maintenance. We need to maintain what we have, and we can only do that if we increase revenue.
Councillor Nesbitt?
Through the chair to fellow council members, I do agree with what you're saying. Like, we definitely do need to keep up with the cost of living increases, but 5% is quite a bit more than the cost of living even for this year. And it's happening on everything. And I think that I feel personally that it would be, that we really, like our former CAO, Doug, did always say that we'll always run deficits within our recreational programs. But what we added, or what I'm saying is that there's a lot of value to the mental and health wellness component to our community. And I think that that's why I would like to stick with 3%. Or 2.75.
Councillor Regner?
I agree we need to generate more revenue for the pool or like the rec center in general. However, you know, if you're going by users themselves, upping the rates by 5%, 10%, making an increase, if you up it by 5%, but we lose 5% of the people that come into there, it's a wash. And those other people are making that up. And so like if nobody's good for 0% until we get actual numbers, which my motion would be 0, I'd go to the lowest one. And I do agree with Councillor Falkenberg that we want to make revenue, but the last number I got was over $900,000 a year that the Brooks Pool itself lost. You know, when you're looking at the utilities and everything else, looking at our usage of our, and we discussed that in the rec meeting, you know, if we could up our usage of vacant ice times and look at some different programs or some different approaches for that, you know, look at some other ways that we can build on the facility use versus the user is kind of the goal I would have. But I'd be in favor of anything on the lower scale of percentage.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, it has been moved by Councillor. Oh yeah, the amendment is, yeah, there's two amendments now. One is to go to 3%, and the other one is to go to 0. Yeah.
You cannot deal with two amendments.
No, I know. Yeah. So the first amendment is to go to 3%. So it's been moved by Councillor Idris that the 2026-27 proposed recreation rates and fees be amended to 3% increase to be formally approved. Okay? All in favor? So that's 5. Okay, those opposed? 2, carried. Okay, what we'll do now is move on to the public hearing, which we're a couple of minutes late. Sorry for that, people, but we'll call the public hearing to order at 5:04, and it's bylaw 26-027, amendment to land use bylaw 1412, and we'll call the hearing to order at, like I say, at 5:04, and we'll have an explanation of the proposed bylaw by Mr. Scott.
Thank you, through the chair to mayor and council, this evening we're considering a public hearing for bylaw 2026-027. This proposes to add a data center as a defined and regulated use to the land use bylaw. As per the requirements of the Municipal Government Act, a public hearing must be held prior to council's decision on the bylaw. At the time of writing my report, there were 1 submission received, and then subsequently we received 3 more submittals for council's consideration. And they are in your package, so I believe you've read them. Alberta's artificial intelligence data center strategy, powering the future of artificial intelligence, sets the path to securing the province's position as the most attractive place to build artificial intelligence data centers in North America. From a pure land use planning perspective, the thematic focus is on quantity of land, power source, and the externalities that come with the use. In an urban setting, there are business cases that are playing out throughout North America for the development of smaller data centers that do not necessarily cover quarter sections of land and provide their own power source in conjunction with their development applications. Data center is a secure building full of computing equipment. These store and process and move digital information. They support things like streaming, online banking, business systems, and artificial intelligence. In simple terms, they are the physical backbone of the digital world. Data centers do not need many workers. Building them can create short-term construction jobs, but once they're up and running, they are mostly automated. This is very different from factories or other projects that create many local jobs. For council, it is important to understand that data centers act more like infrastructure than the typical business. Their main value is not jobs, but the role they play in supporting digital services and generating tax revenue if they are set up properly. The proposed amendment is for an industrial use. It is not to be confused with IT service that may be provided by local businesses or to support local businesses. In the case of any industrial use, including data centers, is how to define it, what districts are appropriate, and what external impacts come with the use. In the case of this use, the proposal is to include in our light, general, and heavy industrial districts, and to place development controls over the sound emissions and security measures that come with these developments. A review of various other North American municipalities and approaches to sound control provided a variety of setbacks from as little as 150 feet to over 1,000. Neither can quantify the components of design and the cumulative sound generation by the HVAC systems, power generation, including backup systems, cooling fans, etc. Alberta has, though, through the Alberta Utilities Commission, normalized the process of engineering sound modeling as a standard means of regulating and informing the public on the probable effect on adjacent land use. In the table of accepted decibels, the question is how much. By way of comparison, 4 to 5 decibels is quiet conversation, 70 decibels is a vacuum or loud conversation, and so on. So the footnote to sound is that the intent is this use in the existing industrial districts would likely preclude a power source other than connection to Fortis for electrical. Where alternate power sources are proposed, there may be requirements through the AUC and the AER at the provincial level. This is not anticipated to be likely given the parcel size in the industrial setting. The City of Brooks has limited industrially zoned land. The second development concern is that the security and safety measures that are undertaken with data centers are set up. The proposed amendment has addressed these concerns by having the applicant submit the details for review. An additional use is being introduced as well, and this is business support services. This is to help define IT services as being separate from the data center. In your strategic plan, this does meet a number of your tasks and subtasks, including your strategic pillars of infrastructure and sustainability. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Bailey Boulay. She has some additional comments that she wants to add for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair to mayor and council. I wanted to add a little bit of a development permitting perspective to the discussion about the proposal in front of you today. So the amendment being discussed, it does not approve a permit. It doesn't approve an amendment to any one parcel of land for zoning. It, however, establishes a framework of rules that ensure that we have some control over how this type of a proposal would be evaluated. So from a development permitting perspective, without the bylaw being amended, we would have very limited ability to regulate a proposal if one were to come forward today. An application could come forward today for a data center. This amendment doesn't approve or deny a data center. It does, however, make it a discretionary use in the industrial zoning districts, as Gavin mentioned. Given that data centers are not all the same, they vary in both range and scale, and the potential for other approvals to already be in place is something that we have to consider, specifically in the case that a data center has already received provincial approvals through the AUC or the AER. So what I'm about to say next is not quite as simple as I'm about to say it, so I'm saying it in a very broad sense, and we're keeping in mind nuance and the specific details of an application. But typically, when the provincial level authority gives approval for one of these projects, the municipality must approve the application to an extent. However, municipalities exercise their control through having a strong framework in the land use bylaw, which allows for the site level conditions to be imposed. And that's things like setbacks, requiring submissions of non-statutory plans and studies that are not otherwise listed in our land use bylaw. It includes security measures and all other relevant approvals, which are listed for you in the proposed amendment to the bylaw today. To simply state it, our current bylaw would be under-equipped. If we got an application today, we wouldn't have the level of control or authority that we would like to see for a development this impactful. This would ensure that use-specific plans and studies are completed and that I have the authority to request them at the time of application in the first place. If a data center is proposed, the application would then be reviewed against the land use bylaw. Public input would be gathered at the time of a development permit application when we have those specific details, such as location, setbacks, and other contextually appropriate matters, and a decision would be made to approve or deny it. This amendment just makes sure that we have very clear rules to guide that process, and it gives us the authority to still exercise control at the municipal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on, Gavin? You're pointing there.
Yes, it's staff's recommendation this evening that second and third reading be moved forward. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any persons speaking in favor of the proposed bylaw? Come on up and come to the microphone, Mr. Knudsen.
Thank you very much and good evening. I am speaking in favor of the bylaw amendments that is being put forward. And I commend the work that council and administration are doing in this regard. I have been following this data center development for the last 3 or 4 years throughout the United States, Canada, and parts of Europe. And with that has come a great deal of, there's an element of concern, but there is an element of this can be a viable revenue source for a community or a region. And what I want to say from the outset is that what is proposed here is putting down some very decent structures. But as you go forward with the bylaw and the amendment, what I'm proposing, and I submitted it to you in writing, is some additional considerations that would actually give this a little more teeth, a little more stance when you have a very sophisticated applicant coming forward and they will be sophisticated. They will have the backing of their lawyers, their engineers, you name it. That is what's going to be coming to you in the form of an application. We know that, as Bailey has mentioned, we need to have the structure, and when this is in place, it allows us to stand tall to what is coming in this direction. But I do feel that there are certain areas that could use a little more oomph. One of it is in terms of scale. They run anywhere from a small server room to the hyperscale artificial intelligence campus. Now, that probably won't work in this area because we have limited industrial area, but we can still have scale issues where a developer comes along and says, this is phase 1 of 2 or 3 phases. And phase 1 typically gets the cursory review, but if they come back and they go forward with additional applications for add-ons, that's going to perhaps put them into a place where if they had approached it all initially, they would have been under the microscope a bit more. So I think when you go forward, you've got to put some scale categories in there just to make sure that our ducks are in a row and we are anticipating what the final result will be in terms of the development that's being put forward. The second one is water. And we do not draw from an isolated municipal water source. We have Lake Newell, the Newell Regional Services Corporation, which is a shared regional asset. We're serving Brooks, Bazzano, Dutchess, Rosemary, and all the hamlets within the county of Newell. It's connected to the Eastern Irrigation District and Bazzano Dam. So as part of this greater discussion as we move forward, it's not going to be that we've got lots of water. It's going to be, it's going to be how this water is shared, utilized, and, for the various purposes for which it was constructed. We have a certain capacity of water coming from Lake Newell to our treatment plant. We also have a certain capacity in our waste management system. Any of those things that are suddenly beyond the realm of what they were planned for, ordinary anticipated uses, is something that I think has to be looked at very carefully, because we don't want to be in a position where we walk towards an approval and we have to walk it back. Another thing, and Bailey alluded to this, is the provincial government's going to be part of this. We also have the Alberta Water Act, which deals with how much water can be drawn out of the Saskatchewan River Basin. And that river basin, of which water flows from the Bow, is one of the most procured water sources in Canada. And there's only a certain amount of allocation that can come out of that water source and still allow for viable downstream use. So we need to ensure that all the parties are at the table, whether it's the EID, the county, and that we're walking in full step with what the province has in mind to ensure the viable use of our water resources throughout the southern region here. Another couple points beyond the scale of the unit and the water. I've identified these in my written submission. There's, at this point, there's no decommission discussion. Yeah, as you go forward with a developer, I think you need to have that discussion. The what if, when is the viable lifespan of this coming to an end, and what steps will they do at their cost, not the municipality, to ensure that that decommissioning goes forward. The second thing that I think you need to talk to a potential applicant and consider as you go forward is that there's no emergency service capacity assessment. Some of these newer data centers are using the high capacity battery storage. that can have very flash-oriented fires. And that has to be, I think, part of a discussion is whether Brooks Fire Services are in a position to have the equipment, be trained, have called upon support from other communities to make sure that in the event of a catastrophic incident, there's safety involved, and there's also proper management of how that type of thing is dealt with. As Bailey mentioned, noise is going to be a consideration here, and a lot of it deals with modeling, but I think you have to go a step forward and get the potential development to actually have a post-planning reading of what the decibels are and things of that nature. So it looks good in modeling, but let's see the proof of the pudding when they're operational. They should be in a position to support what their model says, and I think the city has to be in a position to demand that of them. Also, I think we need to be in a position, and I've heard comments here earlier on other things, that we need a cost recovery plan. So in other words, if what they bring forward puts an additional demand on our water sources, on our fire services, on our electrical infrastructure, they should be paying the price. It should not come down on ratepayers, residents. It shouldn't tax financially our existing structure here. So I think it's important that we have that kind of cost recovery discussion as you move into these things. This type of application, I think, is coming. It's just a matter of when. And there's a few suggestions that I made in my submission that the administration obviously can utilize if they find it useful. And the reason I'm making this submission tonight is that if we brushstroke this as we have done it properly, it gets a little thin. And when a discussion is based on something that is very thinly laid out, that invites more negotiation than perhaps you would like. And the city then ends up with far less leverage. And a bylaw and everything else that the city puts forward, if it comes through or comes towards the developer and they go, wow, Brooks is prepared, then you stand in a greater position to have something that is beneficial financially for the community, but also protects us as ratepayers within the province here. So the ask that I would have is that as the city and administration move forward to consider applications that come in, that perhaps some of the things that I put forward in my written submission will have some credence in that discussion. Also, in terms of going forward, that the scale-based classification be worked on a bit. The electrical loads disclosure, obviously working with the various utilities will give kind of a planned approach, but you need to kind of consider what the back end is, what the actual numbers are. The infrastructure cost recovery, emergency services assessment, the post-construction noise verification, and decommissioning security. So in other words, if they're decommissioning, they should have some sort of security that puts the money where their mouth is, that type of thing. So time is on the city side. There's no pending application right now. So I would respectfully submit that you have time to put the depth that you need in this bylaw and in any subsequent discussions that you may have, so that when a sophisticated application comes along, Brooks is ready and willing to do business, but do it on our terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other persons speaking in favor of the proposed bylaw? Are there any other persons speaking in favor of the proposed bylaw? Seeing none, are there any persons speaking in opposition of the proposed bylaw? Again, are there any people speaking in opposition to the proposed bylaw? Third time, are there any people speaking in opposition of the proposed bylaw? Okay, seeing none, move on to final comments. Gavin, do you have any final comments, or Bailey?
Yeah, I do really appreciate the last speaker's points. I do want to go over a few of them with you just to give you my perspective. Phased development in the community happens often, even in residential. So when somebody proposes to do a development, often they will come with a full package and they may show you every phase. I think what was being alluded to was that they would not show you that. They would come in with one phase. Each subsequent addition would have to go through the same review process as a discretionary use through Bailey. And as such, you would have that review to then say, well, how much more is this? How much more water? How much more electrical? How much more? And then analyze it as to whether or not it should be approved. The question of the Water Act, you as a city have allocation for water, and you have a license for water, and you have your utilities bylaw that regulates the use of water. Any water use in this community is regulated through the utilities bylaw, and as such, you are in control of that water. No outside water can get into your community without your approval. So as it becomes a larger picture, say for the county of Newell, who has a larger footprint and could use more water, the allocation for such a large data center would have to be analyzed at their level because of the size and scale of it. I think what we're suggesting here is that the size and scale is not something that would outstrip your water. Now, that's not to say that in these designs, as we had understood in other communities when it came to cannabis regulation and cannabis production, water usage does creep and sneak up on you. So we do have to, as administration, be very careful about how we outline our conditions regarding water. Often when we review it, is quantified in the number of houses that are being used. So this is how many household units are being used in the analysis, and whether or not that's a bridge too far for council would be something to be considered. Decommissioning is really related to wind and solar projects. There's, I think, a lot of work being done at the provincial level to try to understand that they don't want to have another orphaned well situation, that the wind and solar industry should be looking at decommissioning. I'm not saying that I don't understand the decommissioning of thousands of computers and the cabling that goes with it. I think it does come down to where it's being recycled. And I think the province need to be, they're the ones that are encouraging this. The province needs to understand that as you wear out the computers, where are they going? I don't know that that is a local problem. The decommissioning of this industry has not really hit the radar as far as something that's come forward. Post-sound analysis, again, I believe this is a condition of development. The post-sound analysis, we will model, this is what they're saying they're going to have, yes. If they exceed it, and that's what the chart is doing in the bylaw, if you exceed that modeling and decibels are found at this level, you're in violation of your permit. And as such, you can be receiving a stop order and be taken to appeal on that issue. And the whole thing could be shut down if you can't modify your equipment or modify the sound. So I think it is important, but again, I believe it is a development issue that happens after the issuance of a permit. The scaled approach to electrical is an interesting concept because we always use it in planning. We separate uses. We do so with purpose, though, and that's where I'm not quite understanding what the purpose here would be to split the scale. Several times when in our bylaw, we split things based on minor and major. And we do so because we have permitted and discretionary uses. We would split them and say, oh, this is a minor use, therefore it could be permitted because of its scale. Or this is a major use, and we would put it on the discretionary side so that we review it and look at the negative externalities that may come with it. So that's generally how splitting is done. Now, I did not hear from the presentation that there was any suggestion that any data center be considered as a permitted use at the 1 megawatt or less. Both would be then sitting side by side in your bylaw, discretionary and discretionary, without a lot of what then. And that's where I kind of lost the narrative. I guess I don't follow what the idea between splitting them would be, because I don't see it an added bunch of criteria. We're applying the criteria to whatever scale comes in. You must do all of these things. So those are just a few notes I had on the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or I guess I will at second reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything, Bailey? No? Okay, seeing none, then I will adjourn the meeting at 5:31. And we will move on to the BRZ write-offs, and that will be Bailey. Oh, okay.
Through the chair to council, each year the city levies business revitalization zone, also known as BRZ, taxes in accordance with the BRZ's approved annual budget. These taxes are collected on the BRZ's behalf and remitted to them. Administration has identified a number of BRZ businesses with outstanding arrears where collection efforts have been unsuccessful. These businesses are no longer operating or are no longer located within the BRZ area. Therefore, the likelihood of recovery is minimal. These arrears have already been recognized as a bad debt expense in prior years. As a result, this recommendation is simply to write off the outstanding receivables and close the accounts. So administration is recommending that council approve the write-off of 22 BRZ tax accounts totaling $11,615.32.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. Any questions? Councillor Idris.
So is this every business that has arrears in BRZ, or there are some other businesses that you are still working with to?
Through the chair to Councillor Idris, these are just the businesses that have ceased operations or have moved out of the BRZ area. There's still active businesses, about 15 or so, that have current arrears.
Okay. So for those businesses that moved outside the zone, are they outside the zone with the same business license that they had or originally?
Through the chair to Councillor Idris, there's currently 3 out of the 22 that have current business licenses operating in Brooks outside of the BRZ area.
So why can't we try to collect these?
We have tried and have been unsuccessful.
Okay.
We don't have any recourse with BRZ taxes like we do with regular property taxes. We don't have tax recovery processes.
How about with what we changed recently, where when you renew your business license, you have to pay?
So it's my understanding with the wording of that bylaw, it only applies to businesses that are currently located in the BRZ area. And these businesses unfortunately have since moved out, so I don't think the wording in the bylaw would allow us to fall back on that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, it has been moved by Councillor Johnson that council approve the write-offs of 22 business revitalization zone tax accounts totaling $11,615.32. All those in favor? Carried. The next item we have is a permanent versus temporary use, 907 2nd Street West, and that will be Bailey.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. In 2022, the city originally issued development permit 22D96 for a cafe with a drive-through, which operates at 907 2nd Street West. The permit was approved as a temporary use with the understanding that the use would be reviewed annually by council. The temporary approval was a practical compromise, as the sanitary sewer bylaw and the potable water bylaw both require connection to municipal services within 60 days of occupancy. So the intention for the temporary use was that it would allow council to monitor it for a limited time while reviewing its appropriateness and implications on an ongoing basis. This permit has been reviewed and extended from 2022 to 2025. The last extension was granted on June 3rd, 2025, and it'll expire on June 2nd, 2026. This was discussed at the last council committee meeting, and staff's recommendation is that council formally approve the conversion of the temporary use to a permanent use, which authorizes staff to enter into a special agreement to waive the provisions of the sanitary sewer bylaw and the water bylaw. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Through the chair to Bailey. Just for clarification, this was temporary to see if it cropped up any other potential land uses like this or permits like this, and there hasn't been in 4 years, right?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Councillor Idris?
So the approach we are going to take with this one is to sign a special agreement with this business to do it this way. And then if a similar business comes tomorrow, we will think about it and maybe we will sign another agreement. But still our bylaw does not allow us to do it just by having a clear process to do it.
That's correct. If another applicant came forward and wanted to do the same thing, we would go through the process again where they would request for staff to be able to enter into a special agreement. The provision in the bylaw doesn't have specific requirements for when an exemption would be granted. However, it does allow for the exemption to be granted.
Okay, so why don't do a different approach, which is changing our bylaw, whether it is in the utilities bylaw or in the land use bylaw, to have clear businesses or clear structures that may not need that connection, so that if a structure or a business that doesn't need that connection, then they don't need it. And then rather than a special agreement that's case by case, that could be objective, we go through a process where we can have a very clear process that is objective to do this.
Certainly, it's possible. I want to clarify the land use bylaw doesn't have any objections to this. The only waivers would be granted under the water and sewer bylaw. Another consideration that council could look at is rather than entering into a one-year agreement, they could extend the permit temporarily for a couple consecutive years. But if council wishes, then staff can come forward again with amendments to the water and sewer bylaw with guidelines. That would be to council.
My final comment is actually I'm okay with the business getting what they need to do to continue the business. I believe the business is successful, everything is fine, there are no issues. My issue is that I don't want to do it as a one case. I want to do it in a way that is more structured, where we have, these are the rules. If you fit within these rules, you get the exemption. If you don't fit within the rules, you don't get the exemption. Thank you.
Through the chair to council, part of the difficulty in amending the water and sewer bylaws as well is that it's difficult for staff to predict in which circumstances a special agreement would be necessary. We certainly didn't predict this one, so it would be difficult to think of what if situations moving forward, thus to allow for, a long laundry list of criteria which would necessitate one of these special agreements.
Councillor Idris?
These kind of businesses are like if you go to Seattle or if you go to other places, there are many places that have similar businesses. Can we look at other communities, maybe in Canada here, that have done something similar to this so that we can learn from that experience?
We certainly can. The difficulty is that it's It'll be dependent on whether or not they're being permitted through their land use bylaw and whether or not the other communities have the water and sewer bylaw. That's the prohibiting factor. It might be that in other municipalities, their water and sewer bylaws don't require the municipal connections within 60 days, or that they are utilizing special agreements to exempt them. We certainly can do the research, but there are so many different ways that municipalities within their bylaws regulate these types of businesses that it's not likely that it'll be the same in other municipalities that we look at.
Councillor Phillipson?
And we have to keep in mind that you always request the certificate from Food and Health Inspector. It's not something that we just allow. You have some regulations in place.
That's correct. Just like any other business, they have to obtain a business license. And to obtain a business license, there's a process where they have to submit any provincial or federal approvals that would be required, depending on the type of business being operated. So in this case, it's food or it's a coffee shop, but in some cases, maybe it would be retail or maybe something else that would require a different type of approval. They'd have to follow all of those rules, just like every other business.
Okay, are there any, Councillor Nesbitt?
As a comment, and this is to my fellow councillors as well as to our development department, I understand that this is a business enjoyed by many, and my family enjoys it, so I'm going to be in trouble here. But I think that when we have bylaws that involve our sewer and our water, and people are not following our bylaws, I have an issue with that, because we're going to see other properties possibly come into play, and at what point do we decide there's a problem with the water and the sewer on these locations? When it's kind of right there, and the property owner has that ability to maybe connect them. And I think that I propose that I propose number 3 as the option that I would consider to be followed. And that's not supporting.
Councillor Falkenberg?
I do not drink coffee or tea, so I am not a customer. But as a community member, I love the idea of the business. Just to Councillor Nesbitt's comments, a business like this couldn't exist if they were required to spend the money to put in water and sewer. It just wouldn't happen.
Nope.
So I am in favor of giving this business a permanent application.
Councillor Regner?
I guess the one question I would have is there a separation in the connection to sewer and water between residential and commercial? Is there a difference?
The specific provision in the water and sewer bylaw, I believe, pertains to businesses.
Through the chair to Council Regner, it's stated in the bylaw that all properties shall. So there's no difference between commercial or residential.
Okay, I'm going to go back to a conversation I had with our new CAO. There's a property on the west side of Brooks. It's a landowner. He's not connected to city nor water, sewer or water, sorry. And his taxes are based on a reduction based on him not being connected to that. So if he's not connected to those, there should be no issue with a business not being connected to those as well. They are self-sufficient. They're in good standing of the community. I too don't drink coffee. I'm not a customer, but I see the lineup of people. My wife's one of those. So I don't see a problem if they're keeping to themselves and they're drinking our water that they're paying for one way or another. So, and property taxes are being collected on that behalf for that business being there. So I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Idris?
I guess we are declaring our coffee and tea preferences. So I go with chai tea latte. I have an amendment. My amendment is to approve a 1-year extension for the business and instruct administration to come back with revisions to the bylaw that will allow for a clear process for a permanent use without connection to the system.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, through the chair, to my fellow councilman. I don't support that amendment, with all due respect. We are talking about one-off. That's specifically why I asked in 4 years, have we ever had another application? It's been no. This business has been running for 4 years. It has always received its health inspections. It's received its business license, and it's been there quietly for 4 years, doing no harm to anybody. I don't want to continue to give hurdles to small businesses in the neighborhood. I understand your issue with water and sewer, but if and when they move to a permanent structure, then I think we ask that, and with all due respect.
Councillor Phillipson?
My comments were similar. We need to approve this one so it's off the books, and then if we need another bylaw, we could work on that later.
Councillor Nesbitt?
Okay. Well, what about the other properties that are already, the other trailers that have already started to gather in that same location? Like, we're not just a one of. Yes, we were a one of, but now there's others sitting there. And I think the property owner themselves has some, they need to step up, and if they're going to allow these things, which I do support small business, so that's not the problem with me. It's the fact that these are not connected to our sewer and water. None of them are.
Councillor Johnson?
With all due respect, the other ones that are there are either vegetable trucks that don't require water, or they're food trucks that are mobile vendors, and they have to get a mobile vendor license. So, they're licensed through their mobile vendor. It's totally different, and they've been there for years too, and rotating around.
Okay, so there was a motion by Councillor Idris to amend the motion to have a one-year extension with city staff to review the municipal water and sewer requirements to that property. Am I?
Not to that property, in general.
In general, okay, in general. So I'll ask the question. Okay, is it, everybody understanding this one? This is a one-year extension? Just an amendment to the motion. Okay, is everybody understanding that? It's not the motion. Okay, the amendment is for a one-year extension to review the water for all locations. All those in favor? Okay, one. All those opposed? Okay, the amendment was defeated. So now it has been moved by Councillor Falkenberg that council formally approve the conversion of the temporary use to a permanent use, thereby authorizing the ongoing operation of the business at 907 2nd Street West without requiring connection to municipal water and sewer systems through a special agreement pursuant to Section 308 of the Sanitary Sewer Bylaw 21-25 and Section 310 of the Potable Water Bylaw 1504. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed?
That'd be me.
Okay, carried.
Can we still instruct
Yep,
bylaw to look into this and come with some options?
Yep, for the future. Okay. I'll let Bailey write that before I get her started on the next one. Ready? What's that? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess the question I would have when you're looking into that, can your department authorize like a one-year trial before we take it further? Is that a possibility to streamline it a little bit?
Are you, sorry to clarify through the chair, are you requesting for this specific permit? Yeah, okay.
Future, like if somebody from in the future applies for something similar to what Councillor Idris is asking for,
So what we'll do is we will look into bringing forward some water and sewer bylaw amendments that give parameters for when these could be approved. In the meantime, though, the process would still be the same as the permit we just reviewed, where we would receive the application and then we would bring it forward for determination on a case-by-case basis. Hopefully, we would have maybe brought back already for you a discussion about amendments to the water and sewer bylaw, so that you could discuss whether or not they should be amended with specific criteria for when the waivers would be granted. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The next item is bylaws 26-025, the business license bylaw. Development Control Officer Bailey Boulay.
Thank you through the chair to mayor and council. The business license bylaw requires businesses that operate within the city of Brooks to obtain a business license, with some exceptions. The costs for business licenses depend on where the business is located, whether or not it's a city business license, it's located in the Brooks Newell region, or it's a non-resident business license. Businesses that are located within the city of Brooks pay the lowest fees, while peddlers pay the highest fee. Some proposed changes were discussed at council committee. These changes include no longer exempting landlords or wholesalers from obtaining a business license. It includes the requirement for businesses located within the BRZ to pay any outstanding BRZ taxes owing prior to receiving a renewal of a business license or to receiving a new business license. It includes removing the requirement for mobile vendors to obtain a development permit and prohibiting mobile vendors from becoming permanent or semi-permanent. If the business would like to remain in one location, they would be required to then obtain a development permit and go through a separate process. It also includes amendments to lower the penalty from $75 to $25. And it includes minor wording changes to reference the Brooks Newell region and removal of section 605 and 607 to align with current administrative practices. We also did a rates and fees review from other municipalities in Alberta, and there's a table provided in the RFD to show the comparisons for specifically peddler and non-resident business license fees. We've also included a table that shows what types of non-resident business licenses are operating within the city of Brooks. After reviewing the rates and fees, staff have determined that our rates and fees are consistent with those of similar neighboring municipalities, and we don't recommend any amendments to the fees at this time. And the recommendation before you today is that council provide 3 readings and adopt bylaw 26-025. Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing that we will do is make the first time reading of the motion, and questions can be asked after the second time. So it has been moved by Councillor Idris that bylaw number 26-025, being a bylaw of the city of Brooks in the province of Alberta to control and regulate and license businesses, be introduced and read a first time. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Nesbitt that bylaw number 26-025 be read a second time. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And this one, the third reading, has to be carried unanimously in order for it to go forward, and has been moved by Councillor Johnson that bylaw number 26-025 be given 3 readings at this meeting. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Regner that bylaw number 26-025, being a bylaw of the city of Brooks in the province of Alberta to control, regulate, and license businesses, be read a third time and adopted. All those in favor? Carried. We'll move on to bylaw 26-027, amendment to the land use bylaw 1412. Is Gavin getting up, or is somebody else speaking on that one? Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to mayor and council. My presentation at the public hearing is, well, I guess what stands for this. I'm looking to you for your questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to either Ms. Boulay or Mr. Scott, I have two questions. My first question is, everybody, just to make sure we're all crystal clear at this time, there is no active development permit application on file. That's my first question.
That's correct.
Thank you. And my second question is, I did read every letter that we received. I read Murray's report as well. And a lot of this is centering around water and power. So in my little bit of research, I'm looking for you guys to kind of either tell me, no, that's right or not. There's been a lot of research on new data centers, the new technology data centers, where there isn't a water component per se. And I just want to clarify that if and when there was a development permit that came in, that we would be considering as a city or as a development, those non-water data center applications. And also there's some that are also self-sufficient or somewhat self-sufficient in their energy with vertical windmills. Most of them were vertical windmills. So I just want to clarify, because I think that's where a lot of the issue seems to be in our area, because we do have issues with water. We're not, rich in, we have great water through the EID, but it's not like it's never ending. So can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Johnson, the question of water, I guess, is, I think in our council committee meeting, we did talk about the idea that a lot of these data centers have the opportunity to cool their computers without a water source. We hadn't truncated this to that they couldn't use water. It was open to, when they proposed water, how much water would they use? One of the other concerns with water was also the power generation. So if it was electrical, that would eliminate the most water usage, because the cooling of a generator or whatever system that they were going to propose would be the thing that would be concerned about the usage of water. And then from there, because we're using electrical, we kind of said that that wasn't an issue. The outside power source. Now this is the next thing. The outside power source would be in the city's situation. You wouldn't see a solar farm or a wind farm set up inside the city. Now, we had one proposed. It was direct control, and it did go away from a certain respect. It went away from the point of view that they were having difficulty with getting through the ECU process. Now, council certainly would, I think in my estimation, be in a good position to actually define that use and whether or not it is allowed in the city. We have not gone there at the time that that power plant was proposed. We did, through direct control, propose a bunch of control over it, but that is not in the current bylaw, never was adopted.
I think you're kind of getting off what I'm asking specifically. So when we got the letters with the issue of water, and there was people that were against data centers, I think it's because there is this misnomer that all data centers use extreme amounts of water, and I would like clarification if that's actually accurate. That's where my question lies.
That is not correct. Simple answer. I talk a lot. You got to stop me.
If you don't mind, yes. Kind of like I alluded earlier with my closing statements at the public hearing, not all data centers are the same. They come in many shapes, sizes, different uses, intensifications of use. So what would happen is we would receive an application for a data center, and we would evaluate that application based on its specific criteria. This bylaw actually gives me the authority to request all of these studies at the time of application. So for a lot of different types of development, what you'll see is we'll get an application, we'll go off of the requirements that we say in the land use bylaw we need, and then we'll condition off additional studies that need to be provided prior to the issuance of a building permit. In this case, because of the scale of the development, we would be asking for these studies at the time of application so that before approving or denying this, we would be looking at these studies. We would know how much water they're going to use. We would know whether or not they're going to be using a lot of water or very little water, whether they're relying on the electricity to cool it, how much that's going to be, if they have approval from the other provincial bodies, or in our case, if they have Fortis's agreement. So that would all be something that we would consider at the time of application. And it would also be something that we would be able to then communicate to the public when we do that public consultation piece. Something that our land use bylaw does allow us to do is it says that when we receive an application, we're going to circulate it to everybody who's within 100 meters of the proposed development. We can also have different kinds of public consultation when it comes to different planning documents, such as non-statutory plans. So if we're requesting that these studies and plans be provided, we could then turn around and say, okay, well, now let's have an open house and let's discuss it with the public. We'll answer your questions about the very specific proposal that's in front of you, and that's when we'll talk about whether or not we think a data center should or should not be in Brooks. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Falkenberg?
I have to admit that prior to a couple months ago, I'm not sure I knew exactly what a data center was. I knew the idea of what it were to be, but I had no idea what it would look like. From the little bit of research I've done, there's just massive warehouses. And over the last couple of months, I've seen, major concerns, obviously environmental concerns, but also as a member of this community, my biggest concern would be the vicinity to my house or somebody else's house that lives here. Now we're talking about the land use for specifically industrial zoning, correct? And I'm just looking at my fabulous map here with zoning. I don't really see any available land that's anywhere really adjacent to any housing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So really that limits my concerns completely. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nesbitt?
Through the chair to Gavin and Bailey, please. I appreciated all the time and effort that Mr. Denelson put into his comments and his presentation. I think he has a valid point about the connection or the approval discussion, whatever you want to call it, with the Eastern Irrigation District and our Newell Regional Water Group Services. That's what it's called, right? Newell Regional Services Association Corporation. And is that something that we can put in the bylaw right away and have that as part of the process? Or at what point would they have that ability, other than the public meetings, which I think I'd like to see them have a separate line item.
So, through the chair to Councillor Nesbitt, just to clarify, are you seeking circulation to the EID for comment?
No, I'd like their approval on the project. Would it be? Yeah. Sorry? I know we don't have a project, but I'm just saying, should a project ever come forward, if it was in our bylaw,
if I may add to that.
Circulation would be fine.
Yeah. If I may just add to some of the conversation through the chair to Councillor Nesbitt and your colleagues, I think that that level of review would typically happen at the development permit stage. And so because we don't know what type of data centers we might get, it's nearly impossible for us to compile a list of considerations that make sense. This just creates the framework under which we would evaluate those. So water use, for example, if a data center was to come forward and it is of a technology that does not require high water use, then having some kind of requirement to interact with a water-based agency wouldn't make a lot of sense. And so at the time of development, we believe this framework would allow us to make those determinations and ensure that all of those pieces were in place relative to the details of the development at that time.
Councillor Idris?
Again, this could be something that this specific bylaw is not the right place for, so I don't know why I'm asking it here. But my question is around cost. So if there are needs for upgrades into infrastructure, or if something happens that for example, because of the overuse of the water or because of the overuse of the electricity, the distribution rate increases to everyone. How can we address that issue around cost recovery, around, I don't know how.
Yeah. Through the chair, I'll jump in there again, Councillor Idris. I again, typically with any development, we consider any and all impacts they would have on general infrastructure, and development is typically required to pay for development so that those costs are contained within or by the developing body. Excuse me, rates. That's a question we would probably likely, unless Gavin or Bailey would know that. I don't know that there is a situation where a high electrical user, for example, would trigger higher rates for all folks in that area. Typically, it's just by usage at the local site. And so they would pay a higher percentage of the distribution fee based on the amount of electricity that they used is the typical framework, but I'm happy to have support on that.
Yeah, through the chair to council. The consideration of electrical is something that you deal with regionally. So the transmission line can only carry so much into the region. So as even the county adds in new solar plants, as you add in solar on housing, as you add in the uses like this, I think it is incumbent on you to continue to have staff keep in contact with Fortis and where they are with their capacity of electrical capacity in the community. It is one of these things where it's kind of a pull and tug from one user to another as time goes on, and it's something that is to be monitored. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that, yes, you are competing with Newell's solar approvals as they go on, and even your local solar approvals are part of that equation, as any high-end user would be part of that equation.
Thank you. You got another question? Councillor Idris?
A question around the decommission, and I know you addressed that to a degree, but in the incidents where there is this significant computers and in these many of these items in 2-3 years they may lose their value, so maybe they are not that important to the person who is occupying the space. Can we do something, although it's bigger than us only, can we do something through the bylaw to address that?
Perhaps I'll maybe take a stab at that one first there. I think when we think of decommissioning, we are typically at the development approval, we are thinking about what the site might look like when the operation ceases in terms of potential contamination or things of that nature. We typically wouldn't get involved with internal equipment or production of things like cardboard, for example. Many businesses generate those types of things, and it's their responsibility to manage that. And at the development authority level, we wouldn't be getting involved. So things like computer equipment that may have a lifetime of whatever it may be, 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, 2 years, don't know. And some components may be even quicker than that. That is just a course of a business, and they would be responsible for disposing of those materials under any and all regulations that exist around recycling and waste management. That again, those typically happen at a provincial level. Where I do think that there is some consideration, if any, would be at the end of life for the facility as a whole. That is, I think, the only area where I would recommend we give some consideration. And then again, I believe that would be appropriate for that conversation to take place at the time of development, dependent on the specifics and the nature and the environmental assessments that are required that would allow guidance in those areas.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, if I may, through the chair, just one other thing to add to with decommissioning. I believe that computers and internal components aside, if that building was ever to be redeveloped, so if they moved out and they moved all of the data center equipment out and then a new business came in, there's an existing building there that would continue to stay on the tax roll as an improved parcel of land. Then if a new business came in and wanted to use that building for a different use, we would go through the development permitting stage all over again. So it would be a new use application, change of use, change of occupancy. They would be required to provide us any plans that we request at that time to determine whether or not the new use is compatible with the site. And then when you get to the building permit side of it for a change of use, then they have to follow the National Building Code requirements as well. So there are certainly other steps that would come into play as soon as a new use were to be introduced to the building.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, it has been moved by Councillor Phillipson that bylaw number 26-027 be read a second time. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Falkenberg that bylaw number 26-027, being a bylaw of the City of Brooks in the province of Alberta to amend bylaw number 14-12, being the land use bylaw, be read a third time and adopted. All those in favor? Carried. The next topic we have is bylaw 26-031, Newell Regional Emergency Management Bylaw and Partnership Agreement. That will be Director Shantz.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. Before you use a request for decision regarding the Newell Regional Emergency Management Updated Partnership Agreement and Bylaws for Ministerial Order. To ensure continued compliance with current provincial legislation and operational requirements, updates to the bylaw and agreement include specific language changes, terminology, and numbering changes. Following participating communities' council's approvals of these updates and subsequent commission to the province of Alberta, formal approval of the ministerial order is expected, which will finalize the process and bring the updated partnership into full effect. Topics for council's discussion are option 1, approve the updated agreement and bylaw, which continues our participation in the Newell Regional Emergency Management Partnership under a provincial ministerial order, or option 2, do not approve, which may result in us being excluded from the Newell Regional Emergency Management Partnership. There's no new financial implications associated with these updates. Therefore, recommendation from administration is the council adopts bylaw 26/031 with 3 readings and approve the updated Newell Regional Emergency Management Partnership Agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I'll read the bylaw for the first time, and if there's any questions, it can be asked after the second time. So it has been moved by Councillor Idris that bylaw 26-031, being a bylaw of the City of Brooks in the province of Alberta to establish a regional emergency advisory committee and a regional emergency management agency that includes the County of Newell, the Town of Bassano, the Village of Dutchess, the Village of Rosemary, and the City of Brooks, be introduced and read a first time. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Nesbitt that bylaw number 26-031 be read a second time. Are there any questions? Councillor Phillipson.
Not necessarily a question. I think it's a good agreement. I'm happy to see that all the municipalities are involved. If there is an emergency, we all have to work together. I think my question was more, were there any changes that the other municipalities suggested, or did they all accept the way it was presented to us?
Through the chair to Councillor Phillipson. So the majority of the changes that are in this document came from the Alberta government. So we had to match up the bylaws for all the all 5 involved communities and the agreement to match what they wanted specifically before they'll grant the ministerial order. So it's basically just a few minor language changes to get everybody on the same page. It gets submitted to the province of Alberta. They're going to approve. They've basically given conditional acceptance based on the new documents.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, it has been moved by Councillor Nesbitt that bylaw number 26-031 be read a second time. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Falkenberg that bylaw number 26-031 be given 3 readings at this meeting, and it must be carried unanimously to go forward. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. It has been moved by Councillor Johnson that bylaw number 26-025, being a bylaw of the City of Brooks in the province of Alberta to establish a Regional Emergency Advisory Committee and Regional Emergency Management Advisory that includes the County of Newell, the Town of Bassano, the Village of Dutchess, the Village of Rosemary, and the City of Brooks, be read a third time and adopted. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Phillipson that Council approve the updated Newell Regional Emergency Management Partnership Agreement. All those in favor? Carried. It has been moved by Councillor Regner that the meeting adjourn at 6:15. All those in favor? Carried. Here. Yeah, no, I have to run down. I have to be in the parade.
Yes, you do.